It was a quiet afternoon at a small outdoor cafe near the park. The kind of place where people came to read in silence, enjoy fresh air, or escape from the noise of the city. He sat alone at a corner table, trying to focus on a book, but his attention kept drifting toward a girl sitting a few tables away. She looked calm, almost peaceful, with her hair tied loosely and a soft smile resting naturally on her face. She held a book in her hands, turning each page slowly, as if she was absorbing every word. Something about her presence felt different, gentle, warm, yet distant. He couldn't explain why she caught his attention, but he found himself stealing glances more than he should. Every time he looked, she somehow noticed and smiled back, never shy, never annoyed, almost as if she expected it. But there was something unusual too. She never stood up. She stayed sitting the entire time, adjusting her posture carefully and keeping her legs still under the table. When she reached for her bag, instead of leaning forward, like most people, she pulled it close to her without shifting her lower body at all. He found it strange, but he didn't want to assume anything. Maybe she was just tired, maybe resting, maybe lost in thought. Still, a quiet feeling said there was more to her than he understood. After a few minutes, her phone buzzed. She answered instantly, speaking softly, almost urgently. Then, without warning, she closed her book, grabbed her bag, and rolled away, quickly, not walking, not standing, just moving smoothly out of sight. He blinked, confused for a moment. The way she moved wasn't like someone sliding their chair back, it was more controlled, more practiced. He stood up slightly, trying to look past a group of people and the wooden railing of the cafe area. For a split second, he thought he saw wheels like a chair pushed beneath her, hidden by the table earlier. But before he could focus, she disappeared around the corner. He sat back down, feeling a strange mix of curiosity and concern. Why did she leave so suddenly? Why was she sitting so still? Why did it look like she rolled away, not walked? He didn't know her name, didn't know her story, yet she left an impression deep enough that the rest of the world faded while he replayed that moment in his mind. The next day, he returned to the same cafe. He pretended he was there for the coffee, but he knew he was waiting for her. Hours passed, she didn't appear, but he came again the next day, and the next. On the fourth day, when he least expected her, she appeared, same calm smile, same quiet presence, same careful movements. This time, she noticed him instantly and moved straight toward his table. "Do you read here often?" she asked with a relaxed voice, as if they had known each other for years. He nodded, trying not to sound nervous. "Yeah, I like quiet places." She smiled again, placing her bag beside her without shifting her lower body. "Me too. It feels peaceful here." Their conversation flowed naturally. Books, music, life, dreams. Everything felt light and real. Yet she still didn't stand up once. She stayed seated with the same steady posture, hands resting gently on her lap, legs unmoving. He didn't question it. Not yet, but he left that day with more curiosity than answers, feeling drawn to her, without knowing the truth she was desperately trying to hide. Over the next few weeks, their conversations became a routine neither of them openly acknowledged. Sometimes they met at the cafe by chance. Other times, one of them arrived first and waited. What started as casual greetings slowly turned into hours of talking, sharing stories from childhood, laughing about strange habits, and quietly learning about each other. He admired how thoughtful she was. She listened deeply, gave careful answers, and carried a kind of strength in her voice. She never tried to impress anyone. She just existed with a calm confidence that drew people in. Still, there were things she never talked about: her past, her health, anything related to physical activity. Whenever topics shifted toward hiking, traveling, or sports, she gently changed the subject. Not in a rude way, just enough to redirect the conversation. He noticed it, but didn't push. There was also the way she positioned herself. When they sat together, she always chose spots with space beside her rather than across. And she kept objects, bags, chairs, tables, placed in ways that blocked direct view of her lower body. It felt subtle, planned, practiced. One afternoon, he suggested walking around the park after they finished their drinks. "It's a nice evening," he said. "Maybe we could take a short walk." Her expression softened, but her smile faded just slightly. "Maybe another time," she replied. "I'm a bit tired today," he nodded, not wanting to make her uncomfortable, but inside, he felt the same unanswered question returning. Why didn't she ever stand? The way she avoided movement wasn't random, it seemed intentional. Still, he didn't want to assume something serious. He reminded himself that everyone has personal boundaries. Maybe she had a medical issue she didn't want to talk about yet. Maybe she had an injury. Maybe it was something temporary. One day, he arrived early and saw her coming from a distance. She wasn't walking, she seemed to glide forward smoothly. But as soon as she spotted him, she pulled herself slightly upright, adjusting something behind her before stopping at the table. She always arrived, seated. Never standing, never walking. That night, he lay awake thinking about it. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was concern. He was developing real feelings for her, and he felt guilty for wondering whether something was physically wrong. He didn't want his thoughts to feel intrusive or disrespectful. But the questions followed him anyway. During their next meeting, she shared more about her life, her studies, her part-time work, her love for photography. She talked about pushing through challenges, learning to be independent, not asking for help unless necessary. Her words carried a weight he didn't fully understand yet. At one point, she said quietly, "People sometimes make assumptions when they don't know everything. That's why I don't like opening up too fast." He nodded, sensing there was something deeper behind that statement. "I get it," he said softly. "Everyone deserves to share things at their own pace." But even as he said it, he noticed her hands tightening slightly around her cup, her eyes drifting down as if trying to hide something unspoken. The more they talked, the closer he felt. And the closer he felt, the more he feared she was hiding something she believed he couldn't handle. He didn't know if he should ask, wait, or pretend not to notice. The truth was, there just behind her careful smile, behind her stillness, behind the way she moved without standing, he could feel it. And sooner or later, it would surface on its own. A few days later, he invited her to join a small outing with a group of friends. It wasn't a big event, just a visit to a lakeside trail where people usually walked around, took pictures, and shared food. He thought it would be a nice chance for her to meet people he cared about, and maybe understand him beyond quiet cafe conversations. When he asked her, she hesitated, not in a way that suggested she didn't want to spend time with him. It was more like she was measuring the situation, thinking deeply before answering. "Is it a long walk?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Not really," he replied. "We don't have to walk the whole trail. We can just sit near the lake." She forced a smile, nodded slowly, and agreed. But he could tell she wasn't entirely comfortable. The day arrived. He came early and waited by the parking area. When she arrived, he noticed again how she moved, sliding carefully out of her car seat, keeping her weight supported by the door, then sitting back down quickly. She rearranged something behind the driver's seat before closing the door, like she didn't want anyone to see what was inside. He didn't stare. He just noticed. They walked toward the group well. He walked, and she followed beside him, staying at his pace without rushing. She kept her hands lightly on his arm, but not in a way that showed affection. It felt more like balance, like she needed steady steps but didn't want anyone to know. His friends welcomed her warmly. She smiled, laughed, and held conversations effortlessly. If someone watched from a distance, they would think she was completely fine. She carried herself with confidence, sitting when everyone sat, avoiding situations that required movement, always staying close to the picnic tables. But things changed when the group decided to move down a short, wooden staircase leading to the lower lakeside platform. Everyone started walking ahead. He noticed she froze. Her body stiffened. Her shoulders pulled back slightly, and her eyes locked onto the steps, as if they were something dangerous. The others didn't notice. They were busy talking and moving forward. She tried to hide her discomfort by adjusting her bag, pretending to tie her shoe. Anything to avoid taking that first step. He stepped closer. Are you okay? She looked up quickly, forcing a smile. Oh, I'm fine, just taking in the view, she said, but her hands were trembling slightly. Trying to help without making a scene, he offered, we don't have to go down. We can stay up here. Before she could answer, someone from the group called out, hey, come on. It's only a few steps. She laughed nervously and shook her head. I'll stay up here. I'm not really into climbing. Stairs make me tired. The excuse was casual, but her voice carried tension. He stayed with her, not wanting her to feel left out. As the others moved away, she sighed quietly, relief mixed with frustration in her eyes. It was the first time he saw her mask slip, even for a second. Later, while helping her carry her bag back to the car, he opened the trunk and stopped. Inside, neatly folded, was a wheelchair. He froze. She quickly moved beside him, shutting the trunk before he could say anything. That's for someone in my family, she said softly. Eyes avoiding his, he nodded slowly. Though something inside told him the truth was different. They parted ways that evening with polite smiles. But on his drive home, the image of the folded wheelchair stayed in his mind. It didn't feel like something borrowed or stored for someone else. It felt like something she carried because she needed it. Just not when he was looking. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the truth was, no. Longer hidden it was waiting to be spoken. For the next few days, he couldn't stop thinking about the wheelchair in her trunk. He didn't want to assume anything, and he didn't want to make her feel exposed. But something had changed inside him. It wasn't doubts not about her, not about how he felt. It was a growing need to understand why she worked so hard to hide a part of herself. They met again a few evenings. Later, outside her apartment building, the air was cool, the streetlights soft, and the sky still holding traces of sunset. She looked tired that day more than usual and her smile didn't carry the same calm confidence she usually showed. They talked for a while, sitting on the porch steps. She kept adjusting her position, hands pressing on the bench as if trying to stay stable. When she shifted to stand up, her legs gave out slightly, and she grabbed the edge of the seat to steady herself. He moved instinctively to help. But she pulled back, forcing a smile. I'm fine, she whispered. Though her voice shook. She reached for the car parked nearby. As she opened the door, he noticed she wasn't getting inside. It looked like she was preparing to transfer into something behind the seat. Then, as she tried to lift herself, her foot slipped, and she lost balance. Her body shifted sideways, and she collapsed softly to the ground beside the car. It wasn't a dramatic fall, no loud noise, no panic, but he could see embarrassment wash over her face faster than pain. He rushed to her side carefully, not grabbing her without permission. Let me help, he said quietly. For a moment, she stayed still, staring at the ground, breathing slowly. Then she nodded, allowing him to support her. He lifted her gently, noticing how little weight she placed on her legs. Once she was back upright, she leaned against the seat. Exhausted, there was no longer anything left to hide. She reached into the car, pulled out the folded wheelchair, and slowly set it beside her. Even then, her hands trembled not from weakness, but from vulnerability. He didn't say a word. He didn't want to make her feel cornered. Finally, she broke the silence. I didn't want you to see me like this, she said softly. Eyes still lowered. He stepped closer, voice calm. You don't have to hide anything from me. She let out a shaky breath and sat in the chair carefully, adjusting her posture as if she had done it thousands of times. I can walk a little, she explained. Not far, not without help. My legs don't respond the way they should. It happened after an accident a few years ago. He listened, not interrupting, letting her speak at her own pace. I didn't tell you because people treat me differently when they know. They either feel sorry for me, or they leave. And I didn't want to lose someone before they even understood who I am. She looked up finally, eyes glossy and full of fear. I liked talking to you. I liked how you looked at me like a normal person. I didn't want that to change. He swallowed, feeling a heavy ache in his chest, not because of her condition, But because she carried this fear alone, she continued in a quiet voice, barely above a whisper, "You don't have to stay if you feel sorry for me. I don't want someone who stays out of pity." The words hit him harder than he expected. She wasn't afraid of being paralyzed, she was afraid of being abandoned. He took a slow breath and sat beside her, choosing his words with care. "I'm not here because I feel sorry for you," he said gently. "I'm here because I care about you. The truth doesn't change that." Her eyes softened, tears forming but not falling. For the first time since they met, she looked truly seen, not as someone hiding something, but as someone finally understood. That night, he went home with a quiet heaviness in his chest. The truth didn't push him away of anything, it made him admire her strength more, but he couldn't ignore how she had carried this alone, how she hid such a big part of her life, because she expected people to disappear once they knew that it wasn't her condition. That bothered him. It was the thought that she didn't trust him enough to tell him earlier. He sat alone in his room, replaying her words, "You don't have to stay if you feel sorry for me." The sentence echoed like a memory he hadn't earned yet. He kept wondering how many times she must have heard people say they cared, only to walk away when things got hard. The idea hurt him more than he expected. He wanted to stay truly stable. He also needed to understand what he felt. Was he ready for the responsibility that came with her reality? Not responsibility in a negative sense, but the patience, support, and emotional honesty a relationship like this would require. He decided not to rush his thoughts. The next afternoon, he went to visit a relative he trusted, someone older, calm, the kind of person who gave soft advice without judging. They sat in the backyard under a small shade, sipping tea. "She told me she can't walk much," he explained quietly. "She's been hiding it from me." The older relative didn't react with shock or pity. Instead, they listened carefully and finally asked, "How did it make you feel?" He thought about it. "Sad, but not for her. For the fact that she felt like she had to hide it from me. That means she wanted to be seen for who she is," they replied softly. "Not for what she lives with." He stayed silent, letting the words sink in. Then came the sentence he needed to hear. Loving someone isn't about fixing them or feeling sorry for them. It's about walking beside them even if they can't walk the same way you do. He felt the truth of those words settle deep inside him. Later that evening, he sat by the window, thinking about all the moments they shared before he knew the truth. Her laughter, her thoughtful conversations, the way she listened without judgment. None of those things changed. Her wheelchair didn't erase her personality. Her paralysis didn't replace the person he met. But now he understood why she created distance when topics involved movement. Why she left places quickly. Why she protected her privacy so fiercely. She wasn't hiding because she was ashamed, she was hiding because she was tired of being treated like a burden. And suddenly, he felt more protective, not out of pity, but out of respect for the strength she had shown. He realized he needed to talk to her again, not just to comfort her, but to be honest about how he felt. She deserved a real answer, not silence or hesitation, but clarity. He picked up his phone, typed a message, erased it, then finally wrote something simple. "Can we talk tomorrow? I want to understand more. I'm not going anywhere." He didn't send it right away. He reread it several times to be sure it came from the right place, not just emotion. When he finally pressed send, he felt calmer, not because he had all the answers, but because he was choosing to stay with intention, not confusion. Whatever came next, he wanted it to be based on honesty, not fear, not avoidance, but to people showing up fully, without hiding. The next afternoon, they met at a quiet riverside walkway not far from her home. She arrived already seated in her wheelchair, not hiding, not adjusting herself behind objects or car doors. For the first time since he met her, she approached with nothing between them, no distractions, no excuses, no attempts to make herself seem different than she was. He noticed her shoulders were tense, like she had prepared herself for rejection even before the conversation began. Still, she smiled gently. "I'm glad you asked to meet," she said softly. He sat down on the bench beside her, making sure they were eye level instead of towering over her. They listened to the sound of the water for a moment before speaking. It gave the conversation a calm place to start. "I've been thinking a lot," he began. "Not about what happened to you, but about how you've been carrying it." She nodded slowly, waiting. "It hurt me," he continued, "not because of the wheelchair or your condition. It hurt because you felt you had to hide it from me, like I would walk away if I knew." Her eyes lowered, hands lightly gripping the wheels at her sides. "People have left before," she admitted. "Sometimes they don't say it directly, but I feel it. Their smiles change. Their tone changes. They start treating me like a project or a responsibility. Or they stay because they feel bad. Both hurt in different ways." He nodded, understanding more deeply now. "You weren't afraid of judgment," he said. "You were afraid of losing someone important." She looked up, eyes soft but guarded. "Yes." He took a breath, choosing honesty over promises. "I can't promise I'll understand everything. And I can't promise I won't make mistakes. But I want to learn what your life is really like. I don't want you to hide from me. I want to be with you in a way that feels real for both of us." For a moment, she said nothing. Tears formed at the corner of her eyes, but she held them back. Not wanting to make the moment heavy. "I just want to be treated like everyone else," she whispered. "Not strong all the time. Not fragile either. Just normal." He shook his head gently. "You don't have to be normal. You just have to be yourself. That's enough." A quiet silence followed, not uncomfortable, just full. She reached out and placed her hand on his, not seeking support, but connection. They stayed like that for a long moment, letting the truth settle between them. As the evening went on, they talked about everything she had never shared before her accident. Her therapy, how much she could walk, and how much she couldn't. The routines she had built to stay independent. He asked questions, not out of curiosity alone, but out of care. She answered openly, no longer guarded. For the first time, it didn't feel like one person hiding and the other guessing. It felt like a partnership beginning to form later. As they moved along the riverside path, she in her wheelchair, he walking beside her, they didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The unspoken message between them was clear. They were moving forward, side by side. Not perfectly. Not without challenges, but honestly, as the sun set behind them. He looked at her and felt something deeper than sympathy or admiration. He felt respect. And she looked back at him with something she had not felt in a long time. Trust. Their story didn't end with a dramatic promise or grand declaration, just to people choosing to stay. With truth finally in the open dot, and sometimes, that is where love truly begins.